Welcome to the Spectrum of Health podcast. My name's Jav, and today, guys, we got a very, very special guest, real estate investor, personal trainer, and international model, Jonathan Niziol. Firstly, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. How are you, first of all?
Thanks for having me, Jav. I'm great. I'm here in Texas. Another beautiful, sunny, hot day in Texas. So yeah, no complaints on my end.
That's
A little
good,
bit
man.
sore from last night's hockey game, but that's just kind of an ongoing theme with me. It's just kind of what's sore next or what's sore latest. But yeah, I'm great.
That's the life. That's the life of an athlete. I say that's the life of an athlete. So yeah.
Of course, man. That's how we do it.
So yeah, firstly, thank you for joining me, man. Obviously, we connected a few weeks back, and the message you sent me in regards to your story and stuff was very interesting. And just looking at your social media, so for me, like a big portion of today that I really want to try and get out is like your journey, overcoming the hurdles that you've overcome, because I think that there's a lot of inspiration that can be taken from what you will be able to share with us today. So what I'd love to kind of get into to start off, I always like to take people back. So like, tell me a little bit about like childhood. Yeah, like what was life like growing up?
I'm originally from Canada. I guess I'm in Texas now, but I've been here for 4 years. I'm born and raised in Canada. I was raised on a 500-acre farm about 2.5 hours east of Toronto. So proper farm life. There was always, lots of work to do. Very family oriented. Loved to be outside and just, get lost in nature and just be a free wild child, as much as you can with just nature and all that kind of stuff. And it was, it was wonderful. I've always been, like we talked about before, I've always been very passionate and very driven when it comes to sports. Obsessed, you might say. It just depends on the sport. It depends on what season it was, but that was a really big thing for me. And then I went away for school in my 12th grade year, the final year of high school. I went to a private boarding school just outside of Philadelphia, and I had taken a break from playing lacrosse for about 8 years, and I picked it back up, and then I was All-State Pennsylvania, selected for the All-State team that year, got a scholarship and went on to play in college, and then went on to play professionally. But yeah, that'll come. But that's kind of a brief where it all started. And hockey, of course. Hockey was always a big part of my life. Being from Canada, it's like you're a kid and your parents are just like, get out there. Like, just go get on the ice, 6 years old. So, but yeah, that's, just a happy-go-lucky kid. Not much of a troublemaker. Lots of energy, but like I said, just very, very sports-oriented, and yeah, good kid for the most part. Little bits of trouble here and there.
Yeah,
Nothing crazy.
Random question here: is hockey like the number one sport in Canada?
So it is. Technically, we have two national sports. Hockey's our national winter sport, and then lacrosse is our national summer sport. But yeah, I mean, hockey's like football is like for soccer is to you guys, for the American listeners.
Yeah.
It's, you come out and it's like you're going to be a hockey player.
Yeah.
So, and like down here in Texas, it's football is king. Like they have $70 million high school stadiums.
Wow.
That's like crazy. 7-0. I couldn't believe it. I was like, is that where the Dallas Cowboys play? They're like, no, that's where the local high school plays. I'm like, what? Yeah. What are you talking about? Like,
that's crazy.
But yeah, so hockey's a big deal in Canada, but other sports, soccer's really picking up and basketball's really picking up. It's really really gaining popularity since the Raptors went there, and then they won the championship like a few years back. Those are the two official national sports of Canada.
Yeah. Okay. So you went to college, you played college sports. That's always a big experience. Kind of, what was that like, going from like high school sports to college sports? What was that transition like?
You know what? It's funny you asked that, because It was. I came out of high school just flying, just like playing some amazing lacrosse. Got into college playing, fall ball, and getting ready for the season. And I wish I knew more about mental health and the mental aspect of the game back then, because it was like everything was translating in practice and I was just myself. But then when I was in games, I would tell myself, oh, you're playing at a college level now. And I would like almost psych myself out. Like I played okay, but not up to my potential in college because of that hurdle. I think it was just learning yourself. I skipped a grade, so I was young, 17, my first year of college. Co-ed dorms. It's like, I was like, just people liked me because I was on the lacrosse team. And I was like, this is like, how would I can't go to school. Like, look at all this, like carding, everything. But yeah, that's the thing I look back on, and I think whatever I really would have benefited from is that mental part of it, because that kind of loomed over me. Like, whereas like I'd step on to play a game, and it was like, oh, you're playing against college athletes now, like, and that was a mental thing, and I'd find myself overthinking, or like we say in hockey or lacrosse, like gripping the stick too tight, like kind of just overthinking things, just not letting it like be natural and flow. And yeah, I think that's a wonderful thing that people are doing now, incorporating the psychology with sports and bringing them together, because it is a really big part of it. And you can be your own worst enemy or your biggest cheerleader. So, but it was good for the most part. It was definitely it was a good learning experience.
Yeah, so you mentioned like obviously feeling like the mental side was something that you wish you kind of were better at. Is that a hindsight thing that you look back on and notice, or would you say you even felt it at the time, or would you say you wasn't aware at the time?
I didn't know, because this is like I graduated high school in '99. My first year of college was '99. So like, and even later down the road when I started dealing with mental health issues, it wasn't talked about. So I didn't know. I just knew that I wasn't playing to my potential, and I was in my head, but I didn't know what that was called or how that was treated or those kinds of things. So I had an idea. Now looking back at what I know, and 20 something years later, don't worry, don't do the math, doesn't matter. Um, we don't need to go there. But yeah, now looking back, I definitely can see what it was, but it wasn't talked about. It wasn't available. It wasn't, like I said, it didn't have a name. It didn't have whatever. It's just like, I don't know. And people didn't look at you as like, hey, is everything good mentally? Your play is, when we're practicing, you're dominating. But when we get in game, like, it wasn't. It was just like, hey, like, step it up, like, do what you do here, there. And it's like, thanks, great pep talk, coach. No shit, like, yeah, thanks, bud. Like, great tip, bud. Like, yeah. So, it's in the moment kind of thing, and it's a hindsight to really understand the scope of what I was dealing with.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And at the time, then obviously you got your coaches. What were some of the support systems you had at that particular stage in your life?
Didn't really have any for that, because again, it wasn't talked about. Like, I had my coaches, I had my teammates, but when I would talk to my coaches and teammates about lacrosse, we would just talk about lacrosse. It wasn't about, like I said, it wasn't like, hey, how's everything going with you besides that? And then when I was with my teammates and not talking about lacrosse, we were just drinking and like hanging out with girls. So,
yeah.
And then you feel all loose, and all that anxiety's gone, and all that kind of all that pressure's gone, and you're just like, oh, I feel great. So it wasn't a thing. And obviously, I wasn't going to go to like games drunk or anything, like, but that it wasn't. There wasn't really a support system for anybody at that stage, because it wasn't a thing that was done and talked about and like really focused on at that point.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So it's interesting. I had a support system, but I didn't have a support system, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So kind of like beyond college, when you graduated, and a big thing I talk about is like not retiring, but I guess not being a full time athlete or training every day, going to games every week. What? How did your life change when that ended?
So when that ended, I was actually kind of okay with it because it wasn't manifesting the way that it was supposed to. Like it wasn't happening as naturally and as fun as it was. Um, I was kind of okay with. That's actually a really interesting question because I haven't really thought about that. You're pretty good at this. You should start a podcast with me. Yeah, I was kind of okay with it because it was the first time that it had become a job, and it was the first time that it like I said, it was not going the way that had wanted, and my partying was getting excessive, and I was like, okay, it's time to like close that chapter. I didn't know that a couple years later I'd reopen that chapter playing indoor lacrosse professionally in Canada, and that just kind of happened by happenstance. But things went much better that way, and I picked it up, and then that like when that chapter closed, I had a bit more of a kind of a feeling about it. But like we talked about before, when one door closes, another opens, and I went to another career. But yeah, at the time with college, I was kind of okay with it, and I needed to go home and deal with some family stuff and help my mom out and like that kind of stuff, and kind of straighten myself out too. I kind of gotten on the wrong path of focusing too much on the off the field extracurriculars as opposed to the others. So, but yeah, like I said, I was kind of okay with it because at the time, because it wasn't what it was supposed to be, and I wasn't playing to my potential, and I wasn't having as much fun with it then.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so when you did stop playing, um, a big thing that I battled with personally was like I had played football or soccer all my life, and I was gearing up to try and be a professional. In England, obviously, our system is a little bit different. Where when you finish
Mm-hmm.
secondary school or high school, you can actually go to, if you're in a professional team, they have academies. So you end up not even really
Yeah.
doing education. So I had spent a couple years already being a full time athlete, and I didn't get an extension on my contract. So when I went to the States, I'd already had a taste of being a pro. Um, but then when I got to the
Right.
end of graduating, um, I didn't want to play football. I still wanted to play, but I knew I wasn't going to get to the level that I wanted to. So I had like a really hard battle with what do I do with my life. When you
Right.
stopped and graduated, how did you decide what you wanted to get into next?
So I took about a year off, and just went back to the farm, spent time with my mom, and focused on that. And then I decided, okay, it's time to go out. It's time to get a big boy job, like an adult job, and really, get out on my own. And that's when I moved out 12 days before my 21st birthday and got a job as a car salesman. I thought I love cars. I'm good at talking to people. It'll be a good opportunity. And then um, the day before my 21st birthday, I got a call, and it was from my home number. And I thought it was just a call, talking about the 21st birthday celebrations the next day. And then it was, hey, Jonathan, your mom's dead. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's dead. She wasn't sick. She wasn't like, what do you mean she's dead? Like, it was extremely unexpected. It was extremely sudden. So that obviously shook me to the core. I was just finding my way and kind of tipping, like putting a toe into adulthood at 20, turning 21. And yeah, that really shook me, and bounced around to a couple different jobs. Started to experience diagnosed anxiety, depression, um, clinical depression, self harm, um, panic disorder, uh, suicidal thoughts, those kinds of things, and that's kind of been a constant throughout my adult life. But I went back to what I knew from college, and I just drank, because like I said, when you're feeling things in college, or when I was feeling things in college, I just would drink and then they'd go away. And, I'd deal with whatever happened after that. And then I decided I wanted to go work for my father. That was kind of the long-term game plan. My parents always owned an architectural design firm growing up, as well as the farm. So I always knew that I wanted to go work with him at the design firm. And I had transitioned into that, but my drinking was out of control. And I got to 25 and I got to a really serious case of acute pancreatitis from drinking and being an alcoholic for 3 or 4 years. And that put me in the hospital for a month. Had to have 5 blood transfusions. I almost died twice. And I lost 60 pounds in that month. And, that was a very big awakening for me. Very big, but I got through that. I was just glad to be alive. I came back with a better appreciation for my body. Started to try and teach myself about health. Was still working with my father. I'd gone back to playing lacrosse again, like I'd mentioned. Now I was playing in Canada. I was playing professionally indoors, and I had a career-ending knee injury. And that's when I kind of looked at it as, okay, I've been through all this stuff so far, and maybe it's time to hang up the stick. Maybe it's time, to call it, because there was no future in lacrosse financially. I was being paid, but we were making peanuts. And it's indoor lacrosse is much more like hockey, where fighting's legal, cross checking's legal. So, I'm going to work in meetings with black eyes and stitches, and, coming in from the weeks, whatever. So that was kind of not cute anymore. So, so I was kind of ready. I was like, I can either push through this injury. I can either try and rehab, come back, maybe make it worse. It was a torn PCL and meniscus and cartilage, and just, all the little stuff that tears in there whenever you kind of do a knee ligament. But I was like I said, I think I'm good now. I'm 26. I had a really great run at it. I, got drafted to the national, North American Pro League. I think it's time to hang it out. But that's also when I considered to try some modeling, and not even having thought of that before. My mom was a model in the early 80s and late 70s, and she kind of would have fashion stuff around, and I'd be like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And I kind of looked into that, and then had the opportunity to start doing that full time and professionally. So I just transitioned into that career. So it kind of happened naturally there, with all these life events as well. It just kind of happened naturally, where I, with that mentality of one door closing, another one opens, things really kind of worked themselves out, or started to work themselves out. So I thought, but that's just the beginning of the story. But yeah, I didn't have I need to find I just knew, okay, I'm going to get a job, and I'll get a job. It doesn't have to be a career right now. I'm young. I'll see what I like, see what I'm good at. And, that kind of just moved along.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned a few things there. I kind of want to dive into each part. Obviously, condolences, and sorry to hear about the passing of your mother. That must have been that must have rocked your world at the time. I could only imagine. I guess to as much detail as you can give at that particular time as a 20-year-old man. I guess.
Yeah, it was the day before my 21st birthday. So I was just about 21.
Just about 21.
Yeah.
Obviously that kind of, you mentioned the drinking and that, how that affected you in the next few years, but what was going through your mind at that particular stage? Losing your mother, especially when she wasn't ill leading up to it. What was actually going through your mind? Because that must have been really difficult.
I mean, my mind was racing. The day that it happened, what was going through my mind is my life is over. I mean, as I know it, My mom was my best friend, my biggest supporter. Um, you know, always there for me. I'm very close to my father as well, but like, she was all that, and that was just taken away from me. And that was the first time that, like, the day of and the days following were the first times that I realized that, like, that is an unfortunate part of life. Like, and I use the example of, like, on the day of her passing, I remember, we had to go and be different places and do different things and all the legal stuff you have to do, and your mind's just in a fog, and everybody's just going about their day. Like, everybody else just looks like it's a regular day, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, stop, like, shut down, man. Like, don't you understand what just happened? Like, my mother passed away. Like, but I realized that that happens and is a part of life, and you don't know the people that are going through those things. And you don't know who's having those days. And that was the first time that I realized and saw for myself. You need to treat everybody with respect, because you don't know people's backstories. You don't know who's, like I said, who's having that day, what they're dealing with, at home, whatever. So that was a major thing for me. And then subsequently, it was okay for a year and a half, and then it just became chaos, where it was just alcoholism. It was just drinking to numb the pain. And it was like, yeah, part of it was partying, but most of it was like singular, like very insular, just, being by myself and just not wanting to feel my feelings. And then, and the grips of alcoholism, where, you're waking up and you're getting like the shakes from withdrawals, and, calling in sick from work so you can crack a beer at 8 o'clock in the morning and drink all day by yourself, and, that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, it was a lot of stuff to take in, as well as dealing with these mental health things that were coming on, and I didn't understand what they were. I didn't know, like I said, they weren't talked about. I didn't know what I was dealing with, and I just thought I was, losing it. I just thought I was, you know, going crazy or something, or being weak, or being, that other side of it, where you're like, just suck it up, man. Like, these things happen. Like, quit being a bit, like, just that kind of stuff, and just not understanding what it is. And that's why I think it's so great now that these things are talked about, and they're talked about in a serious manner, where people can see the symptoms of what's happening with themselves or others, and realize, like, hey, I'm not just having a bad day or a bad week. There's something deeper here. And maybe I need to go see a medical professional. Maybe I need to talk to somebody. Maybe I need to, I think that's that's one of the reasons why I want to share my story. And because hoping that people can resonate, and also so I can continue to learn. But yeah, it was turmoil. It was absolute turmoil for a number of years. That was just the first few years after she passed. But for the next 15 years, my life would be kind of chaotic.
So not to stay stuck on there, but obviously the drinking was a big thing at the time. Like, in your worst moments, like, how much would you say you'd be drinking in a day, like in a typical day?
I drank till I couldn't. I was always a beer drinker. I found that, like, hard alcohol gave me, like, extreme anxiety and panic the next day. So I was like, okay, I need to drink beer. And I would drink, in a weekend, I'd go through at least 48 in a couple days, 2 days. I'd probably go through like a couple cases in 2 or 3 days, depending on. It was just a constant. It was a constant. It was like, drink till you pass out, wake up, start drinking again. And if I was too drunk at the time, then I'd just make myself get sick, try and, like, get some of the stuff out of my system so I could keep drinking again. And yeah, it was a lot. It was, yeah, I would say 2, 3 cases a weekend, but I was drinking all week. Like, every day, every night, I was ending the night drunk. Every day of the week, I was ending the night drunk. So it was, it was too much.
Wow. And then, so you mentioned, obviously, like, those are the first few years, but things went on to kind of escalate or didn't even necessarily improve. So like, you got into the modeling, but what was what was the catalyst, or what was the next kind of phase in your life beyond just the drinking? Like what kind of took place next?
So I got sober from alcohol with the pancreatitis. I came out of it and they said, what we've seen in you as far as your severity of the pancreatitis is what we see in somebody who's like 70 years old and they've been drinking for 50 years and drinking like a handle of vodka or like a big thing of vodka, 64 ounce a day. They're like, we don't know how it got to this bad at your age. We don't know why. I'm not to get spiritual or anything, but I believe that things happen for a reason. I do believe that like I was going down a path that my mom didn't want me to, and my body, I'm just thankful that it took me to that, because I was that kid who needed a spanking, not because my parents were, they had a bad day and they wanted to take it out of me, just because I had high energy and I could be stubborn about certain things, and I needed things to be like, oh, like that was bad. Like, oh, okay, I get the message now. So I say it was like an adult, like spanking or correction, because I needed it to be that severe and to sit there, in the hospital bed by myself and really like those, you're 25 years old, you think you're indestructible, you think you got the world all figured out, and you're laying there on your deathbed in a dark hospital room. And so I left the hospital now sober from alcohol, and I said, okay, I need to learn how to take better care of this body. Like I hadn't really taken lifting that serious up until that point. I lifted a little bit. There weren't like YouTube was kind of in its infancy still. It was a lot of bro science, but muscle and fitness magazines and that kind of stuff. So, but I was like, I need to learn how to take better care of this thing, because I almost broke this amazing machine that we have. Like we're given, if we're lucky enough and we're blessed to be healthy, it's what our bodies do seamlessly is incredible. So I was like, I need to learn more about this. So I started working out, and I started working out a lot. And my dad always says one of my greatest assets and my worst assets is when I do something, I do it to like, the top degree. I get obsessive about it. And, like with lacrosse, when I want to play lacrosse, I'm going to go until I play pro. If I drink, I'm going to drink until I put myself in the hospital. When I work out, so I started to work out, but then I started to work out obsessively, because it was a distraction that the same as alcohol, where I could, but with the idea of I'm doing something healthy, like this, I'm just working out. I'm going for my second workout of the day. It's going to be 5 hours, like in total. So what? Like this is healthy. I'm just being super healthy. Well, in hindsight, 2020, it's just like I had replaced that with, the next thing. So, and then with modeling, and then having gotten into modeling, it was actually almost a year to the date. I think it was probably like 15, 16, I don't know, just almost a year to the date that I got my first modeling contract after I got out of the hospital, because I got so passionate about it. And then I started to realize, okay, now my body is my job, and I need to, come correct. I need to, bring my game. I need to like, I'm going to put food on the table. I've got to really like learn and take better care of this thing. But with that comes a lot of comparison, like with any other like coworkers and stuff like that. When you start traveling and like traveling internationally, I was in South Africa for 6 months, and you see your Brazilian roommate next to you, and this guy's got like abs from like here to here, and he just came out of the womb that way, and he's like, he eats like all, and I'm like, man, this guy's incredible. Like, but and you start to compare yourself and say, maybe I need to be more like that person, because I'm still working out like a professional athlete, and they're booking a few more jobs than I am. So maybe I need to be more like this kind of a person, because I was carrying a lot of size, and I was, I saw the guys on Men's Health, and I thought, oh, they're massive, they're jacked. And then I actually like met a number of them, and I was like, oh, I'm like twice their size. Like, they're just very lean cut, healthy. But with my obsessive personality, I, let that kind of fester and that kind of like get into my head. So 6 months in South Africa, things went well. I booked a lot of work, but even despite that, I was questioning myself, and my next stop was Miami. And So I get to Miami, and I was there for 2 days. I hadn't even found an apartment yet. I was just kind of staying in hotels, and my agency's like, "Hey, we're going to send you to a casting. We've got this guy who's a regular client. If he likes you, he'll book you a lot. He designs swimwear and underwear, and we want to go and have you like go see him. He's interested in seeing you. He just saw your pictures. Like, okay, cool. Like that's why I'm here to work. So, but the casting was at like 8 o'clock at night, and it was at his house,
Right.
and my agency said like the guy can be a bit of a creep. I'm like, okay, like, but at the same time, it's my first time in a major U.S. market, so I'm like, okay, like I'm in Miami, like
Yeah.
this is
It's an
like I'm a
opportunity.
body guy. Yeah, this is a big opportunity. Like I got represented by it was like I was with a great agency. I was like, okay, like so I get there and trying on a couple things, and modeling it's not weird for you to walk into somewhere and get down to your boxers or briefs, because that's what you are. They have to see the what you're working with. Anyway, so this guy trying on a few pairs of underwear and a few pairs of swim shorts, and it just like it happened like that, where I came out of the bathroom and he began to sexually assault me. And I was so shocked at like what is going on, like what is happening, like why are you like I just 2 years earlier I was fighting 6'4" guys who are 200 pounds, 250 pounds for fun, and I was just so caught off guard and like what the heck is going on. I pushed them away and said don't touch me, and walked out of there. But that really played into me mentally. But before the Me Too movement and just the world in general, modeling especially though, like because it's so body like it was kind of like the Wild West. And I didn't want to get blacklisted in Miami. So I didn't even think to say anything to my agencies. I just, pushed it down and just like compartmentalized it. But within 2 weeks, I started a 8 year long battle with an eating disorder, because that's when I let my body dysmorphia really flip that switch. And I was like, okay, I'm going to stop lifting weights. I'm going to run. I'm going to do abs, and that's it. And I'll eat my healthy meals throughout the day. I'll eat them. I'll keep them down. But then when I feel my feelings, I'll go get like $100 worth of junk food and I'll binge it and purge it. And yeah, that was kind of the cycle. And my body started to change. I didn't look like the way I was. It got out of control. And that's one of the ways that I learned, like later on, much later on, I learned you have to be the best version of yourself. Like whatever that looks like. Like we're all built differently. That's what makes the world a beautiful place is beauty comes in all shapes and sizes. And you have to be the best version of yourself, and then you will be most comfortable in your skin, and then you will book the most jobs, as opposed to trying to be like Joe whoever next to you, because there already is a Joe whoever and he's standing right there. So be the
Mm.
best Jonathan that you can be. So that was that was the next kind of thing that I put on my plate to distract myself and to kind of just numb myself out when those feelings were starting to rise to the top or starting to bubble up. I just would find something to distract me, and that was my next distraction.
So during that time, when you had the eating disorder, you had kind of you was managing the alcohol much better at that stage, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so I was completely sober from alcohol. I was completely
Okay.
sober because I was terrified of what would happen to me if I ingested alcohol. What would happen to my body? So it
Yeah.
became one of my biggest fears, and it still is to this day, accidentally ingesting alcohol, because they told me, we don't know if you can have one sip, one drink, one whatever,
Oh.
or 6 beers, but all we know is your body hates alcohol. And I was like, hey man, after a month of this, like I hate alcohol too.
Right.
And I had it was Valentine's Day. I remember I had one of the people that worked at our office had a edible arrangement sent over, and they had some chocolate covered strawberries. I had 4 of them, and I had like a pancreatic attack that was similar like to what I had with pancreatitis. And it turns out there was liqueur on the chocolate,
Oh,
in the chocolate on the strawberries. So
God.
it's very sensitive. So I was like, I don't want to mess around with this. That's why I went to like the next thing for my distraction, because I couldn't fall back on alcohol. I went to the next thing. Like, what's the next thing that I can go on to? And that
Yeah.
became a common theme with me, is like the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. Like, how can I get rid of these feelings and like keep moving on?
So
But
during
yeah, the
that,
alcohol, I've been 16 and a half years sober from alcohol, thankfully. And that was from like the day I got out of the hospital and then till now.
that's amazing, by the way. Congratulations to you. So,
Thank you. I appreciate
like
that.
during that period of having the eating disorder, um, how was that? Was that impacting the amount of jobs you were getting though? Because obviously you was doing it to try and look a certain way. So were you getting more jobs while being having that issue, or was you getting less jobs?
See, that's a great question. And it started to turn on me because I wasn't like I at first I started getting more jobs, but then as I lost my muscle mass and just became, more skeletal and with my bone structure and stuff, it just kind of looked odd and kind of didn't look healthy. And, I'm supposed to be a healthy, fit guy. So I started to get less jobs. And I started to integrate, like, that was for a number of years. I started to integrate lifting back into my routine and stuff. So I started to put some muscle back on, but I was still dealing with the alcohol or the eating disorder. So I started to get jobs again because I started to put some muscle on. But for a while there, it really impacted because, yeah, for like our bodies are kind of supposed to look a certain way when we're healthy because of our, because again, we're all built differently, and that's what's wonderful about the world. And yeah, I got to that unhealthy, just like not not good look. It just wasn't a good look.
Mm.
So yeah, it definitely had a negative impact on that for a while.
Yeah. So we had like obviously the alcohol phase. You know, you got into the modeling. Obviously, you had a terrible incident with a cast during your casting, and then obviously that kind of led to a spiral of like the eating disorder. So like obviously it seems like one thing is always kind of leading to the next. So like after the eating disorder,
Yeah.
what was like the next part of your story?
So the next one was drugs, and I went to Amsterdam when I was living in London, and I had been completely sober, so to speak. I mean, I had the eating disorder and I was working out excessively, but I had been sober since I got out of the hospital. But I went to Amsterdam. I was like, I mean, I got to smoke some weed. Like I quit smoking weed a long time ago before I quit drinking. And I didn't want to like pick it up right after I got out of the hospital. So I thought maybe I needed to have some like clear headed time. And like I said, I didn't realize that I was replacing that with fitness. But I went to Amsterdam, smoked some weed, and I had a very addictive personality. And it was like a switch just flipped where my body said, oh, that felt good. That felt really good. Like we should do that more often. And I started smoking a lot. So when I came back, I would go back and forth to New York, and I decided to, be back in Toronto full time, start a fitness business, get a dog who's over there sleeping right now. Um, tough life. Um, I was smoking a ton of weed, and I know people say like, it's not addictive. Weed's not addictive. It's just weed, but it, it was ruining me financially. It was ruining my relationships. It was ruining me professionally. That was like at least a 7 or 8 year battle, dealing with that. And I was smoking so much that I remember I was embarrassed how much weed I was smoking and buying. So I'd buy from like, I had different dealers that I would go and buy from. I was smoking like up to 2 ounces a week just by myself. And I'd go through my day, and the same way I did with my eating. I'd go through my day and I'd go train my clients. I'd go to a shoot. I'd go to the gym. And then when I came home and I was alone with my feelings, it was like, okay, I need something. And then I would, go to the weed, and with weed comes munchies. With munchies comes eating. With eating comes bulimia. And so like I say, I feel like I was a functioning bulimic. Not that there's such a thing as a functioning anything, but I would go through my day and eat my meals and do all that kind of stuff. And then I would just like smoke weed the rest of the day. And then I started with Adderall and, in the pursuit of, being able to focus and build my business, but also, lean out and, that kind of stuff. But that got out of hand where I was having like I think the longest was like a 5-day binge that I was awake for 5 days, like just just taking Adderall and just, I don't know. It was it was a mess. And then there was also nitrous oxide, so whippets. Again, it was just another distraction. I was just finding all these things that I could do, and I was always really good about keeping myself on the baseline of like the entry level drugs, because I knew like the second that I took like a Percocet or an Oxy, whatever, my life would be over. And so I did all the entry level stuff, but I did it like excessively, like as much as you could, like excessively. But I knew that because I was doing it alone, I didn't have it as somebody saying like, "Hey, like hit this crack pipe," or like, stick this in your arm. So I didn't have those things around me. So, but I knew like for myself, like, oh, I'm just smoking weed, but I'm smoking 2 ounces a week. I'm spending who knows how many hundreds of dollars a week on this stuff, or whippets or Adderall. And yeah, it was that cycle of doing that. And the final straw was, so I finally quit smoking weed. I finally quit taking nitrous and Adderall because I just didn't like the after effects of those things. But I had all these feelings still that I was dealing with. And now I had more feelings that I had pushed down and pushed down. And I went to these over the counter back muscle relaxer back pills. And they had 500 milligrams of methocarbamol and 200 milligrams of ibuprofen per tablet. And I'd always taken them because, with our upbringings and our lives, we have injuries. We've worked our bodies, and like, by the time we're 25, our joints look like that of like a normal non-athletic 60-year-old, because we're just like pounding away on them. And we're like, oh, 2-a-day practices. Oh, we got like 6 games this weekend. So I'd taken them because I had those like aches and pains. And I mean, you know exactly how that is. Like,
I mean, I've had two knee surgeries, 3 shoulder dislocations. So, yeah, I know how it goes.
3 shoulders,
yeah.
Man.
Yeah,
exactly. So like, we just beat our body. Like, youth is wasted on the young. We just show up, we turn up, we'd have like a slice of pizza on the way to the game, whatever. We'd go there, we'd score a couple goals, and then we just like, whatever. So I'd always been taking these things, and I found like when I was smoking weed and taking them, if I took a couple extra, I feel kind of loose. Like, I feel kind of like I was kind of being like another kind of level. So now, having weed out of my life, I had to solely focus on these pills. And like anything else, there are the drug guidelines on the back of the bottle, and it says don't exceed 12 per day at the top end because of all the whatever. Well, I was, with my personality and with our body's ability to gain tolerance and take abuse, I got up to I was taking 100 of those pills every single day. No, like I'm not saying
100 a day.
Proud of it. I'm not saying it because I'm 100 every single day. I would go to the store. I would go to the pharmacy. I'd buy the generic bottle. It was $38 and some change. It was $100 bottle. I was taking 50,000 milligrams of methocarbamol and 20,000 milligrams of ibuprofen every single day. I would just get home. I'd dump a handful of like 30 in there, swallow them. I'm really good at swallowing vitamins, by the way, as a result. But I would just put them in, and then I'd either be like out of it for a few hours, I'd pass out, I wake up, dump another handful. Every single day I was buying 100 and having 100. And I started to notice things happening. I started to lose a lot of weight. I started to get really lightheaded and have fainting spells. Like, I fainted twice in my house. And my anxiety was through the roof, because I was thinking, like, if I faint in my house, what if I faint while I'm driving? what if I faint and I take somebody else out? Like when I'd go to the gym, I had no energy. I had no motivation. I thought like, you're just being a wimp. Like you're just being just suck it up. I'd lay down and I'd get up and I'd have massive head rushes where I thought I was just about to like pass out and fall over. So that again, like my anxiety, I'm like, I'm about to collapse in the middle of the grocery store and cause a scene. And I finally went to a shoot and had to jump up off of this truck and then we're coming back down. And every time I would jump down, like between shots, I'm like, I'm about to collapse and cause a scene. So I thankfully I made it through that shoot, and I have to repost that because that was like, I remember posting the picture or a video from that shoot, and it's like, that's how I know the exact day that I stopped. So I went home that night and I thought, hey, maybe these pills are doing something to me, because I just thought like, oh, I'm feeling the effects of taking 100 pills the day before. But I wasn't seeing any kind of, I mean, I was losing weight and stuff like that. And I didn't have but I just chalked that up to like, you're being a wimp, or you're being a loser, or you're just being like soft.
Yeah.
So the next morning I was supposed to go to a shoot, and I remember I was in the mirror brushing my teeth and my knees were buckling. Like I couldn't hold my own weight. So I called my agency. I'm like, I can't go to this shoot. I'm going to the emergency room. I went right back to I went to the hospital. I had a major internal bleeding from an ulcer, intestinal ulcer, from taking all these pills, because they were just eating away at my digestive system. But I wasn't seeing I wasn't passing blood. I wasn't vomiting blood. So I thought I was healthy, but I'd walk in and people would be like, geez, you look like you lost some weight. I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of doing a cut right now.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm like, oh, like, geez, it's becoming noticeable. Like I'm supposed to be like a body guy, and yeah. So that was the last time I took that. And that's when I realized I was 35 at the time. And I realized that my plan that I'd had for the last 15 years wasn't working. And I need to take this in a different direction. And I took the money I was spending, the time I was focusing on, and with that athlete's mentality of, this is not going to get me, I'm going to get this. Like, you go into a game and you want to like put me against the best player on their team. Like see what happens. Like, watch this. Like, I want that challenge. So I focused on that, and I say that now, but it was a absolute battle mentally. But I went to therapy, and I went and worked with somebody who helped me learn the tools to become a sober, functioning adult for the first time ever. I mean, this started when I was 20, or the day, 21. So I'm now 35, and I had always had a distraction or something, and I needed to learn how to deal with 15 years of trauma, or, putting the things off. And then the stuff that had happened, from my mom all the way up. So I went to therapy, and I'm a big advocate of going to therapy. And before it was like, therapy's for wimps, man. Therapy is for other people. I'm not a loser. I'm not going to sit there and pay somebody to judge me. And I just said, obviously what I'm doing isn't working. I'm not living the life that I'm supposed to be living. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to live a normal life again, but I'm going to give it a shot. And I'm going to really like roll up my sleeves. I'm not wearing sleeves, but I'm going to roll up my sleeves, and I'm going to face this thing head on. And that's what I did. And that's when the heavy lifting really started, man. Like I still had I still hit rock bottoms after that, even though I was sober. I mean, I've had dozens of rock bottoms, and a lot of people probably who have been through addiction will say this, but I went with a purpose, and that purpose was to fight for my life, because, at so many points in my life, I had almost lost my life to substances, to mental health, to all these things. And I was like, this is not the life that I was meant to be living. This is not the life for myself, for my mom, for my dad, but most of all for myself. And yeah, I'm gonna battle. I'm gonna do this. So that's what I did.
And how long did you do therapy for?
So for that one, I did about two and a half years. It started out going weekly. I got a great recommendation from a friend, and I would go weekly because I needed a lot of work. I needed a lot of help. I was on eggshells, man. I was like, this is all new territory. I'm trying to navigate life now at 35 sober, like for the first time. So I would go every week, we'd sit down. I met a wonderful therapist, and Jab, it's crazy. Like when I tell you this woman was meant to be a therapist, like it was incredible. We went for 2.5 years. She did not take a single note. We'd pick up whether it was 1 week or 2 weeks, and we would pick up the conversation right where she left off. She remembered everybody's name. She remembered every single thing. She never took a single note. And she was just so genuine, so knowledgeable. Like I have the highest respect for her and what she does and how she does it. But it started out, like I said, it was about 2.5 years, and it was weekly. And then I started to go every couple weeks, and then kind of spread it out to like every 3 weeks as I started to learn the tools and really like put the stuff into practice, because I wanted to learn from her, but I didn't want that to be my new crutch, where I have to run. Like I'm like, oh, do I get white bread with seeds or whole wheat with seeds or whole wheat without seeds? Like I got to call my therapist. I didn't want to be like having her like help me make every life decision. So I wanted to learn the tools and put them into practice myself. And that was about 2.5 years, because I stopped when I moved down to Texas.
Right.
And I was in a much better place now, where I felt like I was moving with a purpose to go and try something new. And I'm a dual citizen, thankfully, because my father was born and raised in the U.S. And I'm like, I had this opportunity to go somewhere and get away from these miserable Canadian winters. But I was going with a purpose, and I wasn't running away from my problems. I was going at a well-built, balanced, finally, like well-built mentally human being that could go now and go in and try a new challenge. Whereas before I was running away from my problems. I was that 15 years of constant distractions, and I was just trying to put my problems in the rearview mirror, one distraction at a time. So I did that for 2.5 years, and then I just started going back to therapy actually recently, just as more of like a check-in, just as like my buddy has a lady he goes to, and I was like, you know what, it'd be nice to go, like just to have a chat, like every 6 weeks, every 2 months, just to kind of have a chat. So that's what I do now. But like I said, I'm a big proponent of it, and it helped me extremely, immensely.
I'm a big advocate for it as well. I did a few sessions a few years ago after having a career-ending injury. So yeah, I'm definitely a big advocate for it, and I think especially in men, as we know, if we look at the male suicide, I think it's one of the best things that a man can do. Obviously, women too, but I think for men it's even more important.
For sure, because we're taught to just like suck it up,
just deal with it,
like, or just put your head down and keep going, like quit being whatever, just like keep going, like. And that was the mentality that I carried with me for so long, because of the time, because it wasn't as prevalent as it is now, but also because of that that machismo, or that like ego that was holding me back from like, well, I don't need that. I'm just going to start a new drug addiction. Like that seemed like a better idea at the time. Like, oh yeah, therapy, that's for losers. But I'm going to go pick up a new drug addiction, and I'll just deal with that for a couple of years. And then I was like, I don't feel like this is working so well. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it is still a thing, and it's still a thing that is dealt with. It's a societal thing. It doesn't pick between, based on your tax bracket, your race, your gender, your anything. These are things that affect all people. But I know especially when I started talking about this, I told a couple of my friends and stuff, and they're like, "Are you sure you want to talk about like having been sexually assaulted? Like, do you want that out there?" And I'm like, you know what? I do want that out there, because it doesn't define who I am, and I didn't bring that upon myself. Right. But I got through that, and it happened. And, I forgive myself for the mistakes that I've made throughout my life in trying to do the best with what I had at the time, whether it's making mistakes with drugs, alcohol, all those things, eating, all that kind of stuff. But also I forgive myself for the things that have happened to me that were out of my control, because those things happened. And it doesn't define me. It doesn't define who I am. It doesn't define the person that I am. But thankfully, it's made me the person that I am today. And I'm like, yeah, I stand behind that, because you know what? Maybe there's somebody else who's dealing with this stuff. And they don't look a certain way, or they don't feel like they can relate or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not ashamed of that. I was nervous as heck. Let me tell you, I was nervous as hell the first time I jumped on a podcast and started, I'm sitting there like sweating and but the more I talk about it, the more it's cathartic for me, as well as wanting to put it out there. And those times that I felt so alone and I thought it would just be easy just to end it all and to just give up. And I want to connect with those people that are feeling that, and they never feel like they're going to feel normal again or ever live a normal life again or have some semblance of balance or health mentally, physically. But it's also very helpful for me to talk about these things, to be able to stand here. And when I first put it out, first put my first video out and talked about some of these things, the next time I went to the gym, I'd been there the day before, but the next time I walked in the gym, I thought, oh my God, everybody's looking at me. Like they know my secrets now. They know that. And I haven't talked about the sexual assault publicly yet. I have done a couple podcasts, but they haven't been published yet. Yours is probably gonna be the first one. But I talked about eating disorder. I talked about drug, and I was like, everybody's looking at me. They're looking at me differently. And then I realized, no, they're not. And then I'm the same person that was here yesterday, and I'm the same person that loves to talk to people and loves to instead of when I was miserable, bring people down to my level. I was just trying to just hope that people are having a good day and say hi and yeah, I got some great feedback and great responses and support from people, and it really helped big time. But yeah, I think it's a very important thing to talk about, especially as society, but for men as well.
100%, 100%. So as we wrap up, I guess the number one question I always ask every guest to finish up, because I think that a lot of people will take some inspiration from your story, and also you've come through it as a stronger human being. If you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old Jonathan, what would be the best piece of advice you could give that man at that stage in his life?
18-year-old Jonathan thought he had it all figured out, and he didn't want to hear anything. So let's say 20-year-old Jonathan, or 21-year-old Jonathan, who was just starting to deal with stuff. I would say that's a great question. It's a fantastic question, actually. I heard something recently where Tom Hanks was doing an interview or something, and he was talking about this too shall pass. And whether you're going through something great in your life,
yeah,
you're going through something awful in your life, or whatever, it's this too shall pass. And to really give yourself and understand that these things are you're going to have these waves of life that go through your life, but also to really forgive yourself for the things that have happened, and accept the mistakes that you're going to make, and just keep charging forward. Persistence is absolutely what has gotten me to where I am today, and the never giving up and that athletic mentality that we brought it back, we talk about and we know so well, is it's the third quarter and I'm tired. Yeah. So what? Let's go.
Keep going. Yeah.
Get some Gatorade, get some electrolytes in you. Let's go. We've got a whole game to go here. We're not we're not quitters. We're not going to go and just hey coach, can you sub me? No, we're going to, that mentality, I would say is a big thing. So understanding that you're going to have waves, and if you're in something, it's not the way it's always going to be, whether it's good or bad. So don't let it try not to let it affect you too much. I mean, if somebody gives you a compliment, don't let it put your head in the clouds. If somebody insults you, don't let it drop you down and ruin your day. Try and stay consistent, because this too shall pass, but persistence is key. Just that fighting spirit. And and forgiving yourself for making mistakes along the way, because we all make mistakes along the way. And I harbored so much resentment to myself for years because of the mistakes that I made. And I was like, you are such, but you know what? Hey man, I was just trying to do the best with what I had and just trying to figure out life. And I wouldn't change it for the world, because it's made me the person I am today. And the people that we are today, these things mold us. And, we have to learn these lessons and go through life. So that would be what I would say.
Well, that would be some valuable advice for him at that time, for sure.
And I wish I could go back. Tell me about it.
Man, I feel like we could do a part 2, because that was really interesting, man. And I think a lot of people will take some encouragement from your story. So I'm gonna put all Jonathan's information in the description. If anybody, what would be the best platform for them to reach out to you on?
I'm just getting into TikTok, but I'm pretty active on Instagram.
Okay, cool.
My Instagram is just my name, Jonathan Niziol, Niziol for everybody who speaks proper English, Niziol for the Americans. But yeah, just drop it all there. Instagram. I started a Facebook page. I'm going to put up start with YouTube and stuff like that. So I love connecting with people. I love learning from people. I love hearing people's stories, and hearing things that they've been through, and learning from their journeys and supporting one another. And I just, love chatting and meeting and talking to people like yourself that are, making the world a better place by having this platform and by, addressing these topics and making it a thing. So much respect to you, man. I really appreciate the opportunity.
I appreciate you coming on, man. Thank you again. It's the Spectrum of Health podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. We're done. Peace.